Good evening, friends. Thank you for joining us on 13 Plus. I'm Mary Coleman. Hope you're having an awesome week so far. Well, when you're in desperate need of an ambulance, you expect it to arrive within minutes, right? Well, thousands of people across America are finding out calling 911 doesn't necessarily mean you'll get picked up quickly. Our national investigative team analyzed data uncovering lengthening delays around the country for those who need medical care. Here's national investigative reporter Chris Nakamoto.
I grew up in the Bronx. Yeah, I grew up in the Bronx. When I finished my reserve duty, I said to my then wife, I said, I'm not going to be a commuter. It actually started about 2 days before. I was playing tennis, and I played a really tough match. I came home, I told my wife that, I had some pains in my chest, and it passed. And then Monday, Rita was watching television, and I was reading a book. She said, I'm gonna go to sleep. I said, all right. And as soon as I stood, it was like somebody hit me across the chest with a baseball bat. I never felt anything like it before. She told me, you're having a heart attack. You need to get to the front room because I'm calling 911.
Medics arrived in a fire truck within minutes, but the agonizing wait for an ambulance desperately drawn out.
They immediately put a line in me. Second truck arrived 3 minutes later. In the meantime, the call for an ambulance was put in, and I needed to get to the ER ASAP.
Are they calling to say, where are they? What's going on?
They're calling every single minute. They were exasperated.
Exasperated because as the clock ticked, 55 minutes elapsed before an ambulance showed up. Sandy Edline says all of the ambulances were tied up, stuck at area hospitals in what is well known in medical circles as waiting on the wall.
Imagine that you need an ambulance. High wall times happen when an ambulance transports you to the hospital. But there are no beds available in the emergency room, forcing the paramedics or the EMTs to wait with you on the wall until the hospital will take over your care.
These delays not only frustrate response teams and those seeking care, but also take that ambulance out of service. So when the next call comes in, there's one fewer ambulance available. In Edline's case, the short drive from his house to the University of Tennessee Medical Center is normally 5 minutes. But with the ambulance stuck waiting, it was more than an hour after the first call to 911 for help that Edline arrived at the hospital with a widowmaker heart attack and immediately underwent emergency heart surgery to install a stent. Edline survived, but experts say such dire delays can drastically impact outcomes for patients. It's a setup playing out from coast to coast. Our national investigative team uncovered that in 2023 alone, data indicates ambulances reported being delayed returning to service because of long wall times hundreds of thousands of times.
And this is a problem that we have everywhere across the country.
Dr. Clayton Kazan is the medical director for the Los Angeles County Fire Department. He oversees the 1,000 calls for assistance that come in each day in America's most populous county with nearly 10 million people. State data indicates at least 70,000 patients get stuck on the wall each year in his state.
If we don't do something, the hospital offload times are going to crush the EMS system. And it's going to impact people in their homes who are having acute life-threatening emergencies like cardiac arrest, seizures, or major trauma patients in the street, and there will be no ambulance to respond to them. And we can't let that happen.
At hospitals around the county, our cameras captured ambulances lined up outside hospitals. Investigate TV showed Dr. Kazan these images, and he confirmed the ambulances were waiting on the wall.
I waited 12 hours in a hospital emergency room. And that stayed with me till this day. Like, I felt like it happened yesterday, right?
The problem, not only prolific, but personal for one California state lawmaker. As a paramedic himself, Freddie Rodriguez knows the risks wall times pose to the public.
And I tell folks, do you know what it's like to stand up against a wall with a patient that's non-critical, really non-urgent, but because staffing or issues at a hospital doesn't have a bed to put that patient in, you're gonna have to wait in a hallway with the patient, you and your partner, for 12 hours.
Our national investigative team combed through data from the National Emergency Medical Services Information System, also known as NEMSIS, which collects data from 911 calls and where EMS crews are dispatched. Our analysis of 2023 data found that for calls where crews reported waiting on the wall, the average time it took for the ambulance to get back into service was more than 40 minutes. But many delays are even longer. We found that roughly 1 in 5 crews reported being delayed an hour or longer. In extreme cases, hours turn into days.
The longest wall time in Los Angeles County was 25 hours.
Our national investigative team looked at state laws around the country and found most states don't have a law that limits wall times for ambulance crews. The feds have known about this problem for years, and the Department of Health and Human Services has in the past sent out an urgent notice, alerting states that hospitals may be violating the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, known as EMTALA, by parking patients on the wall. But that notice was issued in July 2006, and despite nearly 2 decades going by, many say the problem's only getting worse. That's why Rodriguez authored a bill that was signed into law last year, making California one of the first states to attempt to keep wall times in check.
And like I told folks, you don't need to tell me. I've worked the field. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen the delays. I've been delayed to 911 calls because hospitals were tied up.
Hospitals are now required to report wall times publicly and must come up with protocols to reduce them further. As Los Angeles County slowly makes changes, a pilot program called the Advanced Provider Response Unit, funded through a grant, is also helping reduce hospital wall times. This roving pharmacy on wheels responds to 911 calls with a paramedic and a nurse practitioner. If the patient can be treated on scene, it eliminates the need for a trip to the hospital. So far, that program has responded to 18,000 calls and alleviated the need for ambulance transports for 7,000 patients.
The reality is the longer you park patients on the wall, the more likely we're going to have bad outcomes result. And it has clearly happened everywhere.
Everywhere, including Jackson, Mississippi.
I called him 5 times that night. I went back into the living room and he was on the floor, unresponsive, making some god-awful sounds, and he was flailing his arms and legs.
Donna Eccles' ex-husband, who was watching her house, was having a stroke. 5 phone calls and 90 long minutes later, help arrived a little too late.
Where are y'all? Why are you not here?
The ambulance service that was late that day blamed the delay on long wall times at area hospitals. Her ex-husband did not survive.
We live in a civilized country, and to wait almost an hour and a half for life-saving ambulance services, it's inexcusable.
Edline is among the 12% who survived the type of heart attack he suffered. He says his doctor lamented the additional time it took for him to receive care because with cardiac events, minutes matter, and the 55-minute delay is why he plans to keep fighting for accountability and change at the local level and beyond.
We're not talking about conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican issues. We're talking about the health and welfare of entire communities and cities in the nation.
What's going through your mind, and what do you want to see change?
What goes in my mind is I'm the luckiest guy in the world, to be honest with you.
Well, the ambulance company says wall times hit record highs during the pandemic, where it was not uncommon to wait for at least 5 hours. All agree this is a systemic healthcare issue. We leave you with a live look of the Tucson metro area, where it is dark and ready to go this evening. Hope that you are enjoying yourselves because the temperatures have dropped a little bit. I'm seeing it's 92 outside right now, so hey, maybe you can get out for a little bit while it's not scorching. Hope you're having a great evening, and will join us for 13 News Live at 10. Good night.